think you're muted.
Every time.
Can't get that right. Welcome, everybody, to a Friday night once again in Coach's Corner. We have Viscount Tristan and Duke Sean back. Welcome. It's nice to have you back, Sean.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Yeah, I bet. So we're talking our favorite subject, and that's martial arts and fighting and all of that. I know I look forward to every Friday night just getting a chance to hang out and talk about what things we love. So it takes me out of all the other crap I have to deal with all the time. So anyways, tonight's episode is the kind of book review, but it's hard to call it a book review. It's actually more about lessons and kind of some of the insightful pieces that we find in Bruce Lee's book of Tao. So the Tao of Jeet Kune. Is that how it's pronounced, Tristan?
Tao of Jeet Kune, yep.
All right.
It can be pronounced Tao like a hard T or D-A-O. It kind of sounds like a D-A-O either way. And so, Brannos is going to post up a link to a PDF. So if you
let me grab that for everybody.
So you can, if you want to page through it, you can. It's super cool that it's out there for free and
But if you're speaking to somebody in Chinese, then the inflection definitely matters because it could be a totally different subject.
Absolutely. And there are a number of PDF versions out there, so you can go find them. Of course, got the old dog-eared copy of, hard copy that I had for years and wore it out. Yeah. Outstanding book.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, I think the key here is there's so much involved in this book. And I will personally say, and I think all of us, it's like I went to look for my book earlier this week and I'm like, where is it? And I know I had it. So, my books are pretty well done. So I'm going to have to go look through my library cards. I put library cards on my books. And I bet you that thing's been out for 20 years and I just didn't know it. So there was a lot of just kind of running back through stuff. And I was like, this is obviously a book I have to read through again and again and again, because there is so much good content. And we were kind of talking about that before we joined the show. And, we were looking, and you get looking at the pictures and at the real rough drawings, and then next thing you know, you start reading the content around it, and you're just kind of stuck in that thought for a while, and then you start kind of browsing and really pushing through that. It's I think it's one of those books, and Tristan, you said this, it's kind of like Musashi's book, where the more you read it, the more you gain from it. Also, I think that's, in a way, it's also the same way as the more you read it, the more experience you have, the more you gain from it. So I know, Tristan, you've been burning through this week for trying to catch up on some stuff. It's been a little bit. And
it's been a busy couple of weeks here, but I, refreshed myself going through it. And one thing I want to cover before we really get into this is yes, it's a book by Bruce Lee, but he didn't assemble it as a book. He was injured, had a back injury from doing some weighted exercises. It laid him up for months. And because he was a very restless person, he decided to channel it into taking all of the knowledge that he had percolating in his brain. And he just started scribbling down notes, writing everything he could think of from every perspective of his view of the martial arts and what his art was and what he had kind of assembled. And we were also talking about this before the show. He went through a curve where he was taught a traditional martial art. He started with Wing Chun. He excelled at that. He gathered other source material from other arts, absorbed what he liked. He was going through a very much an odyssey of martial arts. And he was in kind of the past the part where he started blending arts together, but it was always a vibrant study for him. He never considered himself finished with it. And this book was an assembly after his passing by a couple of his students and like Daniel Inosanto, which is kind of a martial, what would you call him, a compatriot, helped assemble these notes in a cohesive manner, because they were just a pile of notebooks and drawings and sketches and parables, and they had to figure out how to make it somewhat cohesive and put it together. And they did a very good job assembling it. The writings are his, but they've been kind of put together. And one thing I'll note about this book is that it is very meaty. There's very little fat to it. It is just like a brain dump from a martial artist explaining every thought and every concept that he felt was important, he wanted to get down. It's a little rough because he never went back and edited or refined it, or it's just like a raw fire hose from somebody who is extraordinarily talented. A lot of great observations. For anybody that doesn't know in depth about Bruce Lee, he considered himself a martial artist first and foremost. The fact that he was an actor, yes, he had ambitions to be, an actor and whatnot, but the love of his life really was his martial art, and developing it and taking it to a level far beyond where it was given to him. If that makes sense.
No, and I think the key there is too. I mean, it was everything around what even made every piece around it too. I mean, his library was huge. Mm-hmm. And his diet and we talked about his diet and his workouts and his understanding of of all the parts of the physical body. And then you joined into the fundamentals. He had understanding of art and of the mind and all of these things. I mean, it was a little bit of what his career was, because he came here as an instructor, right? But in the end, I think he gave up that really hardcore traditional kung fu he had, mm-hmm. to really broaden his whole life by being immersed in all the other pieces that became, Jeet Kune Do, right? Mm-hmm. The really, to me, the never-ending martial art, right? It's that freedom. There is no one way. And in fact, I think this is the reason why this was never a book. It's not that he didn't know, not that he didn't use books, obviously. Mm-hmm. But there was that fundamental. He didn't want to write it down so people thought that these are the limitations of Jeet Kune Do.
Well, and that's a word that he used quite a bit, is that limitation. And I think I very much get the feel that his frustration with traditional arts was that they forgot a lot. They left out. Things got sort of pushed to the back and then forgotten. And he didn't want that limitation. He was not happy with the fact that a traditional style is a limiter, a severe mm-hmm. limiter. He wanted to go far beyond that.
Well, and on that note, I mean, one of the things that is mentioned in the foreword of the book by the authors is that this book is Bruce Lee did not consider this to be the end. He considered mm-hmm. this very much to be the beginning. And that kind of goes back to that whole thing that Brannos was talking about, that kind of gets into the formlessness of it. That one of the things that you see a lot in this book and in Jeet Kune Do as a style, if you will, is one of my favorite things that from Bruce Lee is no form from form. It's the formless form, and it's breaking away from the rigid dogmatic nature of martial arts, where it has to be this way, and that these are the moves that you have, and you have to do it this way, because if you're not, then you're not doing you're not doing Wing Chun, or you're not doing praying mantis, or you're not doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's like this kind of kind of a purist ideology of martial arts, and it wasn't just that. Jeet Kune Do is not just assimilating other techniques. It is releasing yourself from the need to be bound by any one technique, including Jeet Kune Do itself. It's just being free to use whatever is available. And more than that, I mean, using what works for you. And that was, that's kind of one of the things that I'm excited to talk about tonight is, how, as we were kind of talking about how we wanted to present this is, a lot of what's in here is the lessons that we have learned as martial artists, and how we've been able to apply these concepts to SCA combat. Because there's a lot of that's in this book that, probably about half of this book is JKD, specific moves, techniques, strikes, and that sort of stuff. But in addition to being a martial artist, and as Tristan was saying, he considered himself first and foremost a martial artist. And I think what gets missed, and I think what he might have missed as well is he was as much a philosopher as he was a martial artist
and a bodybuilder.
Yeah. And a bodybuilder. And again, these are things that are kind of, tangent to his martial arts, but it's like, I want to have a better physique so that I can do my martial arts better. So he ends up being a bodybuilder, and the philosophy associated with his martial arts, is in this effort to become a better martial artist as well. And then, he ends up being really a master philosopher as well. There's so much of this that is, I'm sure, based in Buddhism and Zen. But the way that he presents it, it's his take. And, one of the things from the introduction in here that I've always really kind of has resonated with me, Brannos was talking about the thousands and thousands of books that he had. There's this one section in here where it says the 2,000 or so books that he owned and the countless books he read describe the individual discoveries of thousands of men before. There is nothing new within this book, and there are no secrets. It's nothing special, Bruce would say. And there is nothing in this book that has not existed for hundreds of years. And we as trainers and we as martial arts in our, sort of disparate sport, compared to Jeet Kune Do, like very much the same. A lot of the concepts that we have, are not just from this book, but they're hundreds of years old. Range is a concept, right? Range is range. And how we teach that range. Me and Brannos both manipulate range very well. We do it in very different ways. So the idea that's just always something that's really struck with me is that there's nothing new here. There's nothing that we are inventing in the 50 years that we've been doing SCA combat. We are just finding different ways and different voices to express universal truths that have existed in martial arts for centuries. I think
what we're doing is rediscovering.
Yeah. And I think that learning is power, right? And it's also freedom in its own way. And it's it's nice. Everybody's kind of jumping in and just kind of thinking of the things they really enjoy about what they got out of the book, right? And this is one that we hear all the time, and I wonder. I'm going to just throw it up because it's learn everything and then forget everything. We listen to that all the time, and it means different things to different people, and. The idea for me is we learn as much as we can, and we learn it as well as we can so that we don't have to keep it at the forefront of our mind. Those techniques aren't necessarily techniques that the thought of execution of the techniques becomes so fast that it's just part of you now. And, it's a hard concept because other people are like, well, we learn it and then we're so good at it, we never have to think about it. It just happens. Well, to me, absolutely thinking about it at some point, you're like, this will work. And then it comes out, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's thinking that still has to go to find that technique or something that you've learned to make it to still execute. There's something that triggers that. And that trigger itself, it's about how fast that trigger happens. If I have to go dig through 10 things, and it takes that long to dig through 10 things to fit that trigger. And that's slower. And I think that's where it's like forget everything. And the forget everything is that meditation piece of we shouldn't have to think constantly necessarily in the fight to execute. And because if you do, it's very, very slow. And we'll talk about some examples of that later. But what do you think about that concept, Tristan?
You mean of the
learn everything and then forget everything?
You know, when I hear that, it strikes me of, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, where there's like 3 layers of learning. First, you start to learn the physical, and this is when you're a newbie. And somebody pointed out, I like Larry's comment about, he said,
yes.
I don't think a beginner should embrace the concepts of formlessness. Absolutely true. You're learning the physical language. You learn about balance. You learn about movement. You learn about, shifting, posture, control of range, the physical, tangible aspects of fighting. And those are not just loosey-goosey things. You either have good balance or you don't. That's nothing you can just mess around with. You have to learn that part first. And then you go to the mental part when your body starts to learn how to move correctly and you don't have to think about it. And this is what comes onto the statement of learn everything and then forget everything. You actually, in order to start really understanding what the mental aspect of fighting, you have to kind of forget about worrying about where your feet are and worrying about how your balance is and what your posture is and worrying what your hands are doing and those types of things. You have to let that go. And then you go on to the mental. And the same thing happens when you start to understand more of the mental, and then you want to go to the spiritual level of fighting, where you're in, like Musashi's The Void. You're not thinking about anything. You're not planning. You're not strategizing. You're not thinking about your body. You're just observing and acting. Like there's no, and I don't want to say reacting or responding, because that implies that you're being entirely defensive, but you are seeing what's there and you are acting appropriately to prevail. So that's when I hear that, forget about it, like learn it and then forget about it. It's that process. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, it's very much a process, and I like Larry's comment there, and I definitely wanted to clarify on that. One of the things that Bruce Lee talks about is no form from form, right? You don't just start with no form, because that's just a hot mess. But to Tristan's point, you have to go through and you have to understand what the techniques are. You have to understand it to a certain level before you can then violate the laws of the technique and find that formlessness. But there's definitely a point at which you have to understand what it is supposed to be, before you can really begin to make it your own. And that formlessness and understanding that, again, with the one of the other things, and this is kind of what Tristan was talking about, kind of reminded me of another thing that Bruce Lee talks about is the when I first started learning Kung Fu, a kick was just a kick and a punch was just a punch. And then when I studied more, a kick was more than a kick and a punch was more than a punch. And then as I understood Kung Fu, a kick was just a kick. Right. And what that is part of that. That's what that process is. There's a period of discovery that you kind of have to go through, once you understand the form and once you understand what the techniques are supposed to be. There's sort of this period of discovery that you have to go through that basically equates to, what does this button do? It's like, well, this is how it's supposed to be done. But what if I, modify this, and what if I modify that? And being able to make those changes. I mean, that leads you to the synthesis of kind of creating your own version of the basic form. And that's what gives us individual style, right? Because style certainly within our sport, style is very, very subjective, and it is very personal, and it is based on your background and experiences. Brannos came to our sport with a heavy boxing background. Al-Anon came to us with a heavy basketball background. And those things impact how they execute their martial art within our sport. I came to this without any athletic or martial arts background at all, so all of what I do is purely been SCA driven, and then it's assimilating from all these different places. But there was definitely this is the way it goes. Now, how does it work for you? And that's what creates your style, and that's all part of that process that Tristan was just talking about.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I think too many times we, and I got this through the whole career. It's like everyone's like, oh, no, I'm going to go out and fight with no mind. Like, okay, I'm going to actively not think about anything and just do everything instinctual. But the problem there is if you don't have the techniques to do them well already ingrained, then you're just going to do bad technique.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, so you have the idea, but we have to get there first. It's a development. It's no different than 30 years in a game. I look and like, I want to do this. So now I got to put my hours in. And I tell you, me and Rumgaller look at each other because, and I've said this many times, and that is we go to a practice, brand new guy comes in, we teach them footwork, and they're better at it than us in a year, right? Because me and Rumgaller had to keep thinking about it because we have that rut that Tristan put us in. Thanks, Tristan. With his comment about once you get in that rut, it's very hard to get out. So sometimes we'll be standing there. It's like, oh yeah, I got to move, and you have to keep. So for us, we have to keep it a little bit more forefront in our minds. The good part is we can process other things and we block other things out enough that processing's still very fast. But for someone that's brand new and that's just what they learn after X number of hours, they're just doing it. And it's happening much easier for them than it is us because they didn't learn all the other stuff. So this is one of those cases where it's like you have to get good techniques ingrained first. And then that no mind takes over per se, or that empty mind. But I think a lot of people just think there's some magic in it. There you know what the magic is? Hard work.
And to put a modern term on it for those I know we've mentioned this one too, is the OODA loop. If you look at it just in terms of throwing a basic flat snap shot, when somebody starts out brand new in fighting and you have to outline how to actually throw that shot. And I know Bruce Lee, whenever he did his movies, he really liked lacing in lessons from martial arts in there, from Chinese culture. He really liked sharing that wisdom. It wasn't just, all right, this is gonna be an action movie. He liked having those things. And I remember in the beginning of Enter the Dragon, he talks about, he brings his fist up. He says, it punches by itself. Like, I don't have to think about it. It just goes. And if you think about throwing a headshot with that very same thing, all your eye does is it sees that moment where that shot is going to land, and you don't think about it. That OODA loop is so small and tight that it cycles through. You don't get that by not thinking of anything, by just having formlessness. It won't.
And here's a quote from his book, right? This is that the conscious self is the greatest hindrance to proper execution of all physical action.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
right?
exactly.
This is exactly what you're talking about, Tristan, right?
Yep. And there's no shortcut around that. That's the hard work that you're talking about.
That's correct.
Doing the reps, building it so that your body just does it. Another quote, and I don't recall this one being in the book, but it certainly is accredited to him. He says, I don't fear the man that's practiced 1,000 kicks or 10,000 different kicks. I fear the man that practiced one kick 10,000 times, because it's automatic. By that time, that kick is just one sliver of a thought, and that thing has been fired, and it's solid, like every time. So,
Here's a good quote. I'm just going to throw it and see what you guys think about this quote. Let me edit. Whoops, sorry. Let me edit this one and throw this one in here.
We don't have a producer tonight, so Brannos is pulling double duty.
Exactly.
We got him scrambling. To know oneself is to study oneself in action with another person. Yeah, so, it's kind of an elaboration on Sun Tzu's "Know Yourself and Know Your Enemy." and you could boil both those down. What does it mean to know yourself? How deep does that rabbit hole go? And I think it goes very, very deep. Kind of like I guess if you'd say either a race car driver who knows his car, or the driver's mechanic who knows that car, every nut and bolt of and how it works and how it functions and what to listen for, what to feel for, how to push it, all of those things. That takes quite a lot of work to understand yourself as a fighter or as any kind of an athlete, to know exactly what your body as a machine can do. And then if it's something that you need it to do that it can't do, you have to train it to do it. You have to go through the work to get it to respond the way you want it to respond. And sometimes you have to deal with a limitation that is just exists. You can't train it out or overcome it. You have to work with it. I think that's crucial about knowing yourself.
What do you think about that one? Sean, I mean, it can be taken a couple different ways.
Yeah. Tristan was just making a point there, and I had a fleeting thought, and then it just kind of disappeared. Because I get all wrapped up listening to what he's saying.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, knowing yourself and studying yourself. I mean, it is difficult. It's difficult to see yourself from an outsider's perspective. Because we get so wrapped up in our goals, ambitions, and what we want to, what we're trying to manifest. I think it's that action, that action with another person and that interactions that we have. If you were to embrace that and basically allow other people to help you with your path. And, instead of just saying, well, I've got, this is what I have to be as a martial artist. If you can, I mean, it takes a village, right? It's a community project. And if you get stuck in this idea that your martial art has to be, this one way, I think that kind of goes to what is in this book is, again, with the formlessness and the freeing yourself of having to be, a certain martial artist. And I think that, yeah, you can only see that with the help of another person and with competing against other fighters. If you're lucky enough to have fighters in your area that push you, that's great. But there's no substitute for things like Penzic and Gulf Wars and, War of the Phoenix. Getting out and finding out how much you don't know about our sport. And really, as I've said often, embracing the suck and indulging in defeat, right? Getting out there and finding those people. I mean, if you're, it's what's that old saying? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
In the wrong room, yep.
If you're the best fighter on the list, you're on the wrong list, right? There's always going to be somebody better than you, and discovering yourself comes from it can absolutely come from those interactions with other people. And I know every time I go out on the pickup field and I go to fight, I'm assuming that there's an evaluation happening somewhere, and either I'm going to be helping somebody else out or they're going to be helping me out. And so that's part of that. And I think that's something that Bruce Lee really taught without knowing that that's what he was teaching.
Cool.
Brannos is on mute again.
I had to restart
because it's been 3 years. We're still on mute.
I'm still on mute. I was just going through the art of learning again, and that's exactly what they were talking about. It's like they go and they to know oneself is not to celebrate. In fact, you look at the ideas of Zen in the art of archery or any of those, right? And you neither celebrate or or get mad or angry about what you do. It's about knowing yourself, right? And those are emotions, and emotion is not knowing, not trying to introspect and look at your internal yourself. You have to be, you have to know that what happened in that fight. They were talking, oh man, I forget one of the best wrestlers ever. And I was just going through the book, but so he's one of the most amazing athletes in the world. And he goes from winning 200 plus matches in wrestling to the Olympics. He lost one wrestling match, and that was, it was interesting. He pushed and pushed and pushed, and he just said at the end, he didn't evaluate the fight right and how that person was going to do it. So he understood. He wasn't happy about it, and he still lives with that fight every day. He probably couldn't tell you everybody he won against. He could, but he could tell you about who he won when he won gold medal in Russia. And it wasn't that, he did everything right and celebrated winning a gold medal. It was actually that he coasted at the end, and he's mad about it because he didn't live to push himself like he teaches. And I think the goal was there is we have to be careful of that coasting piece. I'm good enough is the beginning of the end, right? And in life, we constantly have to look to stress ourselves and make more of ourselves. And we're going to have stumbles on the way. We're going to break stuff. We're going to get new stuff. We have new challenges, but we just have to keep working through those challenges. And I think that's coming down. The more you work through those things, the more you know about yourself, right? And I think that's part of life. And the more you find that place inside, for me, I find that place inside, and I struggle, especially right now. I don't even know what I can do with my shoulders. I fight all the time, but I have to watch. I have to be careful. I'm still trying to figure out what I can do and can't do. But, when I'm doing it, the world is gone, and it is such a beautiful place, even with those limitations that I'm working through, because I'm stressing myself to see where I can go next. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter if you have to take a step back because something happened. The beauty of it is finding that stress and working forward again. You don't have to be the greatest fighter in the world to do that, right? You just need internally to want to be in that place and work hard on being the best person you can be at anytime.
Well, something that I've talked about that kind of goes along with that whole thing is that for me it's the contest, it's not the conquest, right? It's the struggle, it's the striving for greatness. It's not necessarily the achieving greatness of itself. And that's kind of what Brannos is talking about is as you get better in our sport, it is more and more difficult to find the people that are going to stress test you, mm-hmm. and that are going to be able to help you isolate those deficiencies. I mean, I've been working with this sword and buckler for a little bit, and I've been fighting some top shelf fighters with it. And because it has to work against the best fighters in the world, because I've got enough experience that, fighting with sword and blocking device, that is going to work against a vast majority of the fighters that I face. But, how is that going to work against Brannos and Sven and Uther? And, I've been able to fight some of those guys with this weapon system, and, I
and all right, we're losing him a bit. We'll wait until he catches back up here.
I've kind of.
Oh, you're back.
I think I'm caught up.
Nope.
We glitched there for a second.
Hold up. But let your internet catch up to you here. Your brain is working faster than the internet.
Oh, it does that. No, but I mean, it's yeah, the better you get in our sport, the harder it is to find people that are gonna press you and to be able to force you to be better than you already are. And it's you have to actively seek those people out to go for it. And that's I think it's kind of goes with what Brannos was just talking about.
And Larry had he nailed it. It's Dan Gable, and Dan Gable was so good that people in many other sports were in awe of him as well. So amazing man, went on to take his school through multiple national championships, still to the, you know, and even as he passed the school over to his other people, they were able to do it too. Very good. If you get to look through or read or listen to The Art of Learning, you'll learn a lot of great stuff in that book. I'm going to throw another comment out there. Let's see, and we can just get a quick talk about this one. Let me edit this again, and because this one I'm not sure what my answers are going to be on this one, and of course I'm going to type part of this in, and it's only going to do part of it, and I'll finish the rest online here. So. Let's see, let know oneself. Oh, no, I lost where that was. Nah, sorry, folks. We were going to try that one, but it cut it off. So I'll just throw another one in. The greatest mistake is to anticipate the outcome of an engagement. You ought not to think of whether it ends in victory or defeat. Let nature take its course. Let your tools will strike at the right moment. So do you think this is like, hey, no mind again, or is this actually talking about something deeper than that?
I think this is a different thing. This is something that I've learned somewhat from Bruce Lee, somewhat from Sagan. For me, this is about reacting to what is actually happening in the fight in the moment, rather than trying to press your fight based on what you expect to happen. And it's preconceived notions, right? Preconceived ideas about how the fight is going to go based on what you know about your opponent. That's one of the reasons that I don't particularly like Rolodex fighting. Where you go through your Rolodex and it's like, oh, I fought this guy 8 times before, and this is all the stuff that they do. Just because that's what they did in the past doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do in this moment. And it is truly reacting to what is happening in the moment and seeing what is happening in the moment, rather than working on percentages. That's how people end up, getting into combination shots. Well, if I throw these 5 shots in this order, then, by the time I get to shot number 5, then this thing has to be open. And that's all just percentages.
No. And he had a good conversation going. It's killing me. The anticipation.
Things that about the striking dummies. Yeah. When you got the striking dummy. Was I dropping out again?
Yeah, you're dropping out again. You want to reattach and maybe get a better connection?
Maybe. I'm not sure what's going on with my internet here, but anyway, preconceived notions. That's what that all gets down to. Now let me drop out and see if I can get back in.
Okay, Tristan, do you have something on?
Yeah, actually, when I was refreshing myself on the book, I came across this near the end, and I'm going to add this here as a graphic because I think it's worth showing. And that is, he refers to this as the 6 diseases, and I think we just talked about number 1, the desire for victory, and this is a condensed version of planning out what is going to be the victory in your fight and trying to plot and map your beginning to end. But I like the other ones too, because I think how many fighters have fallen into these, the desire to resort to technical cunning, which is to be, I'm going to by some crazy move or some magic technique, I'm gonna prevail in a fight, and that causes a fighter to start pursuing those magic techniques. They go around and they search for them, like somebody hunting the end of the rainbow for the pot of gold. The next one, the desire to display all that has been learned, and this is kind of just a display of the ego, wanting to show off, how much you're enjoying that you've gotten better and things like that. But it can be a distraction. We get a blip there. I think that saw that he dropped. Number 4 was the desire to awe the enemy. And I think within the SCA, we also fall into the trap of wanting the desire to awe the onlookers or your friends or the people that are watching. Not necessarily anything wrong with wanting to do well or wanting to show well, because that will often drive us to improve our armor, to improve our appearance, even to fight cleaner because it looks better. But be careful about being drawn into wanting to make such a good show that you compromise your good principles of combat to make you more efficient and successful. Number 5, the desire to play the passive role, and I think that this is I think one that we could talk about at great length. When you're in your fight and you decide that you want to kind of sit back and watch and wait, and you give the initiative to your opponent, and you be lucky to get it back if he allows it, or you have to fight very hard to take it back from him by your own cunning. That can make it an uphill battle. And then the last one is the desire to get rid of whatever disease one is affected by. And I think that one could be, I suppose, a little cryptic, and maybe we could discuss exactly what that one means. But the idea that you have some kind of a fault or deficiency, and you just cannot have that. You must purge yourself of any imperfection, and you relentlessly do so to the point of it being its own disease. Like your obsession becomes self-destructive instead of constructive, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. I think that's, I'm struggling with a little bit of, I think that right now. And we're talking about, the ideas that disease could be an injury that you're overcoming, could be a sickness, literally a sickness that you're trying to get through. And you're so
bad habit or one of those,
or your bad habit or whatever, but you're so focused on that thing that you forget to fight. Yep. Or even if you don't forget to fight, you're still overly focused in that, and you're not fully engaged in the fight, because all of these talk about not being fully engaged in the fight. Yep. If you desire victory, again, emotion, desire, get the hell out, right?
There's a parallel story, and I was just watching a documentary on a crash of Flight 401 back in the 70s, and I asked my dad about it because he's a career pilot, and this flight was coming into Miami. They were looking to land. They put their landing gear down. The light wasn't indicating that the gear was locked down. And the pilot got so obsessed about this light, and he was tracking it down, he forgot to keep track of his altitude, and he crashed into the swamp. So clear case of pilot error. You're so focused on one small thing that you've lost track of, in that case, flying the aircraft. Like, that's the important thing that needs to happen. Or for SCA fighters, it's managing your fight with your opponent, not getting so obsessed about this bad habit has creeped up again, or I don't have the initiative that I wanted to, or my plan didn't go the way that I thought it should, and all of those things.
Yeah. And if you look at the very top, what it says is, here's the 6 diseases. Mm-hmm. Victory isn't a disease. It's a disease that's affecting your mind at the time, instead of being in that fight.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of what that gets to is, by becoming obsessed with these types of things, these diseases, you are not able to fight free. When you're tied down by any of these things, you're not able to just simply execute the fight that you have, right? I mean, your fight's either good enough or it's not. But if you are consumed with any of these concerns, you're not actually fighting to the most accurate version of who you are as a fighter. And sometimes you just got to take the fight you have is either good enough or it's not, right? But if you don't execute your, the truest example of who you are as a fighter, then you're not fighting free, and you're not really you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a trainer, something that I see often is people trying to show me how good they are, or show me what they learned, or they're trying to impress me by winning, maybe, but they're not really showing me who they are as a fighter. And as a trainer, if you're showing me something totally different than who you are as a fighter, then I'm going to be making adjustments and corrections that are going to throw you down the wrong path, because you're showing me who you want to be and not who you actually are. And all of those, diseases that were listed there, that all kind of gets back to, just being able to fight free, and let me tell you, being able to fight free and fighting just for the sake of execution is absolutely liberating.
Yes.
It's liberating, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. And you're going to find out that you are far better of a fighter than you are when you're trying to stop doing these things. And I think that last one, trying to eradicate all these diseases, it's like, oh, well, I have to, not do this thing that I've always done poorly or whatever. It's like, just fight, just execute. And, like I said, it's either good enough or it's not. And if it's not, which, let's face it, it's not, right? It's not, your fight is never going to be good enough, but it can always be better, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way that you can find out what is deficient is to just throw out what you actually have, and then let us as trainers, evaluate what it is and try to find a way in which you can improve on what you are. And then, you go home and you go to practice and you do the training at home in the dark in your driveway, by yourself, because that's where the real work actually happens, is by yourself. And you do all that work and you go to practice and you try to fix those things, and then you get another evaluation later. But we have to see who you really are. And when you're trying to eradicate all these other things and say, it's kind of the, you're not fighting to win, you're fighting to not lose, sort of thing. You're saying, like, let's not be that fighter, right? It's like, well, let's focus on what you want to be, not what you don't want to be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, even more than that, and you brought out something up, and I just want to comment on this because I think this is critical, and that is not enough. And that's a disease too, not feeling like you're good enough. And you know what? Who has that sometimes struggles with that the most is the people at the top.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They not only struggle with it, but they get into it so hard that it hurts them over time. And it's, it's
crippling.
It's crippling 100%. At the beginning, it's not enough means I can't beat that person. I can't beat this person. And I'm still learning techniques. Some people, even at the beginning, feel like it's not enough, but they at least know there's more, and that they're at the beginning. And it's no easier there than it is at the top either, but they have more options. When you start getting into the top and you start driving into that game, you lose a couple fights that you don't think you should lose. Now that creeps in your head so fast that, is this the end? Am I taking a step down? There's the disease. You literally have to get that out of your head. And that becomes really difficult when you're at that level. So there was a question. I want to throw this out. Have you ever used your skills to defend yourselves in a life and death / injury situation? How did these concepts apply? So I'm not sure I've been in a life or death. I've been in some fights, and not many, to tell you the truth. I use the best martial art as it's fight like a physicist brings up, and that is the run kung fu. And it doesn't have to be run. It's talk. if you calmly talk to some people, you believe you'll be amazed how you can change things. Some fights you can't run from, and then you're in a different spot. And some just throw you into those situations where something happens. I've been in this one where somebody did something to me accidentally, and I went into that mode that that people had to pull me off the person because I just wasn't there, right? I was executing and without thought. And to tell you the truth, that is also not that is not the place that you actually want to go when it's a life and death situation. That's a very dangerous place to go when it's life and death. Where you want to be is smart in those positions. You want to be able to talk yourself. You want to find opportunities to allow other people to leave. You want to do those things. You just don't want to go berserk. So just take that in mind. That's comes again out of there was really good information in Fight Like a Physicist, specifically around this. But if you look at a police officer, or other trained personnel, a prison guard, they're literally, the reason they train is so they don't stop thinking. Because you stop thinking, you die. Doesn't mean that they're thinking slowly and about everything. They're thinking very fast because they have been trained in these opportunities. And by the way, we talk about 10,000, you have to practice it 10,000 times before you get it right. How many times did somebody actually get to practice death/injury 10,000 times? You don't. In your life, how many times, a pro boxer gets 10, 12 rounds, 50 times? It's a huge, right? How many is that? It's next to nothing. Yeah. In the middle of those fights, they have to evaluate their fighter, the person they're fighting all the time. They have to think. But it's not 10,000 times. You think they're really good at it? No. Right? But they're better than us because they have practice.
Yeah, and that's where, what we do, I have to, I've asked this question a lot, like, what are we doing? Are we doing combat? Are we doing sport? Are we doing fun? Martial art is, it is a safe environment in which we can exercise skills that have a combat component to it. One of the things that our sport has that most martial arts does not have is full speed, full contact, where we really can execute the shots at full speed. Most karate tournaments, taekwondo tournaments, whatever, those are all just the tournaments are just to the touch, because if you were to execute those techniques correctly, you would kill somebody. And you don't want to break your toys. So in that sense, we have that advantage to where we can actually execute full speed, full contact. But on the other hand, with the safety concerns that we have, there is a certain element of risk that is missing that keeps this from being combat, right?
Yeah.
Personally, I'm with Brannos. I'm much more likely to avoid a physical confrontation. I know that my skills from SCA combat, I suspect would serve me well, but quite frankly, I'm glad I've never had to find out.
There's an instructor over in the UK by the name of Ian Abernathy, and he had an article he wrote years ago called The Martial Map, and it highlighted the three major realms of the martial arts. And I don't remember the terms he used because I had my own kind of similar thing. It was the three realms, one of which is sport combat. Another is academic, which is people studying forms, doing, martial flavored movements and whatnot. You can think of your Tai Chis, and even a lot of traditional arts really do a lot of their work in the academic realm. And then the third one is actual real combat. And any particular martial art is somewhere on that map of kind of a mixture of usually two of them, or even just one only. And it's easy for for sport martial artists to think that their skills will transfer into the combat realm. And being a good athlete certainly helps. It's better than nothing, but that combat realm, I refer to that sometimes as crazy town of anything can happen, is a different realm. And to bring it back to Bruce Lee's book, he actually mentions that a few times in there in terms of self-defense. You're in a real fight. He talks about using Savat's shin kick and then an eye jab, and he goes into depth about how to apply eye jabs, how to train them, because that will end a fight fast. You just flick somebody in the eye and it's going to be over. And so you can see the influence that he had of actually street fighting. And I guess this is back when he lived in, where was it? It was in Hong Kong.
I thought he was in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it was Hong Kong. The influence of that versus a lot of the stuff that he studied from the different arts and he absorbed. You could say Savat, it's modern times, it's a sport art, but before that, it was a very effective street combat system. And it was elegant in its simplicity because it was an art of being, drunken sailor. So you can be completely trashed or on the, deck of a pitching boat and still fight effectively. This is one of the reasons that it was such a great street fighting style. But Wing Chun came out of, its origins were in urban combat and confined spaces. But there were those influences usually with every martial art. The farther you go back into its history, the more it was combat, the less it was a refined sport art. But you can't have a sport that's that brutal. You have to have the rules to tone it down and be able to do it with some intensity. And that it does reflect that in Bruce Lee's book. And, a lot of the stuff, everything he takes from boxing or from fencing, those are judo when he took that source material from them, not hard combat. But there were aspects of them. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here was something that's a core principle of Jeet Kune Do. And you could consider this relevant to SCA combat, and that is it's built on what he called the straight lead. And this was a big variance from what he studied from Wing Chun that had the strong hand back, like a boxer. If it was a right-hander, the right hand would be back because that's your power hand. That's the big hitter. Your off hand would be your forward hand. He liked and admired how fencing put the strong side forward because that's the hand holding the sword. That's your weapon. Strongest weapon is closest to your target. And so he turned that around and made Jeet Kune Do primarily built on keeping your strong weapon forward, close to your target, so it can land the most powerful strike the quickest because it has the least distance it has to travel. Now, what of those concepts is different from SCA fighting? It's the principles are there. You want to have your weapon as close to your opponent as you can. It has to travel the least distance in order to get there. Like with weapons that are aimed, anything with a thrusting tip like a spear should be pointed right at your opponent. You're not going to have the point all over the place because it has to go too far to get online and then go to where the target is. So these principles are reflected, I think, in there. And he did some sketching on the straight lead and whatnot, but it's imagine the consideration of changing a fundamental of what he was taught with Wing Chun to switch it around because of an outside influence like from fencing, and to realize, okay, yeah, I'm going to just switch my stance entirely because it gives me this advantage.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. We talk about taking a little bit from everything, and there are a lot of fundamental principles of boxing in there. In fact, we see nowadays more and more boxers doing strong hand forward compared to the past.
Yes.
Which is against all of what boxing thinks of.
Mm-hmm.
But they use it in a way that allows them to confuse and break down their opponent. There isn't as much power, but they have to learn ways to get the power in there. you can break that down. You got Crawford who can use both hands. Sometimes what happens is he'll use his strong hand forward, break somebody down, switch, and then use his strong hand from behind to throw the big bombs, right? But those big bombs take time. And you have to create that time to be able to use them. If you can't create that time, throwing a big bomb don't mean nothing, right? And that's in our sport too. We have to create it. You know, it's Al-Anon talked about this. There's no shot clock. And so the idea there is too many times we're in a rush to throw a blow. We haven't evaluated the fight. We haven't figured out what our opponent is. Our opponent fast? Does he move well? Does he, you know, is he defensive? What we haven't figured them out yet. What's the weakness? Does he take pressure well? Is he a counter shooter? And because we're too busy wanting to throw that sword. And I think that's this piece that we're talking about, is that we need to understand and understand. Well, this goes back to the other piece. We need to understand ourselves and how we're reacting to our opponent, and we have to understand our opponent, right? And that goes right back to something we talked about a couple things ago. But you know, take that time in what we do, and you'd be surprised what you find just by not worrying about throwing that sword much. And that doesn't mean be passive like the 6 diseases, right? You can be active and pressure and push, give. Even when you look at Muhammad Ali, when he was going backwards, he wasn't passive. He was pulling his opponent into him so he could punch him. Right? So he's actively engaged and doing things. I do this all the time. Passive means you are waiting. Go ahead. And you know what happens when you wait? And we all want to get, you know what's passive? I throw a couple blows, I step back. When you're stepping back and stopping, that is passive. That's a time when your opponent can take over being the aggressor. The fight is about who is the aggressor. And that doesn't mean you have to run at them. It doesn't mean you have to be in range. To be the aggressor, be that person working the other person. That's a really hard concept, but
you know, there's a section in the book here under qualities that is vision awareness that kind of talks about this a little bit. It says learning great speed in visual recognition is a basic beginning. And I think that's some of what you're talking about is, you know, I talk to people about the vision of the fight. And to me, that's not, it's not what you see as far as, you know, the physical stuff in front of you and the targets that you have a visual line of sight on. When I talk about the vision of the fight, I'm talking about just what Brannos was saying is how we see the fight and how we see the fight develop. And you know, again, that gets back to one of the concepts we talked about earlier about, you know, being able to see what is actually happening and not what you want to have happen, you know, because, you know, as Brannos was saying, you know, that fighter that wants to get in there and just start throwing stuff, you know, they're just throwing what feels good, you know, and you know, of course, why do we do that? Well, because it works. It works against a certain caliber of fighter, and we're going to get in there and we're going to I'm going to get in there. I'm going to throw my magic combo, and, you know, I'm just going to throw it fast and he's not going to know what hit him. But you know, that just doesn't work at the top end of fighting. And, you know, along with this vision awareness, one of the things that he says in here is high levels of perceptual speed are the product of learning, not of inheritance. These are trained and taught tasks. You know, you can be taught how to see the fight develop if you allow yourself the time to develop that. And you know, like Brannos was saying, to actually, you know, to take the time to see what's actually happening instead of just trying to, you know, jump in there, you know, blow your wad and get out, right? And hope that you threw enough out there that something's gonna stick. And you know, invariably, you know, those that are trying to, you know, make things happen, you know, it's just, quite frankly, a lot less work when you can look at the fight, see what's happening, identify those targets and give yourself, I mean, you have much more time than you think that you have. I mean, yes, ours is a speed-based sport, but when you take just a half a heartbeat to slow down a little bit and look at what is actually happening, now you're throwing at targets that are actually open, not targets that you want to be open. And when you're making better decisions about the blows that you're throwing, the resources you need to deliver a telling blow are inherently present when they're not, when you're trying to force something to happen. And yeah, take that time to learn how to read the fight and see the fight and find that vision for the fight. And you're going to find that it's just a lot easier. It's just a lot less work.
You waste less of your effort too.
Well, and here we go. Here's the next one right here. So while being trained, the student is to be active and dynamic in every way. And in actual combat, his mind must be calm and not at all disturbed. Right? You must feel as if nothing critical is happening.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, this is that calm mind. They want you to be active and dynamic when you train because they want you to be engaged. They want you to push yourself. But when you fight, that is not that time necessarily. If you're going to push yourself, it should be at points in that fight that you have to. In other words, you should reach to that point. But most of that, and this goes back to Sunwolf's comment, which is shocking if you read the comments. But, if you're not calm and you make one mistake, it could be real life and death. Mm-hmm. But getting to that calm mind, how do you do that? Right? That's I guess there's the real question. How do we get to that calm mind? How do we get all the diseases, that disease out? How do we get to that emptiness? How do we, it's there are so many ways to talk about this. I think in the end, what we are talking about is the ability to put ourselves into a place where our thinking and reactions are very fast, that flow state where everything happens, everything's very clear. You go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. There is nothing in between.
Well, and I think the one thing that prevents people from being able to get into that flow state and to really just allow the fight to happen, in those diseases they were talking about being too passive. I talk about the offensive mindset where it's this razor thin edge between passive and aggressive, where you have to allow the fight to develop organically without having the fight happen to you. Right. I mean, if you're just sitting there watching it all happen, then bad things gonna happen. But, the thing that keeps us from getting into that flow state and trusting in just the execution. I mean, it's all fear-based, right? I mean, and what are we afraid of in the execution of our sport? We're not afraid of being hit. We're not afraid of being struck. Right. We have armor. We have safety standards. Like, we're not afraid of being hit. We are afraid of losing.
Oh.
That's what really all that comes down to. And it is, you have to find a way to free yourself of being concerned about the wins and losses. And for me, that comes down to something that we talk about a lot on the show, and that's victory conditions. And being able to just execute and not be concerned about the wins and the losses. And going back to something we talked about earlier in tonight's episode, is this indulgence of executing just for the sake of execution. Right. And to some extent, again, in embracing the being beaten, embracing that failure, and finding that person that is that much better than you on that day that can help you become a better fighter. Don't go to Pensick and expect that you're just going to mop the floor with everybody that's out there, because you go out to the pickup field Me and Brannos are going to be out there.
Yeah, and I hope you don't, because to tell you the truth, you should be going out there trying to find the people that wipe the floor with you, so you know.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, because that's what you get, especially if you're coming from. I mean, if you're coming from out on the West Coast and you're going out to Pennsic, the learning opportunities there are just mind-boggling. And if you go out there thinking you're just going to show everybody what a great fighter you are, quite frankly, not a lot of people are going to want to like indulge in that. Like, people are just not.
That was
really
another disease to show off how much you learned.
There you are.
Exactly. Right. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are interested in letting you show the world how great you are. You know, I mean, as trainers, something that we talk about a lot is like, I don't care how good somebody is or how good somebody is not. I really don't care. The only thing that interests me as a trainer is whether or not you're interested in being better than you are right now.
I can't agree more there. And I think Tristan is 100%. He does this for a living. And I'm going to tell you, Dan Gable, and that's the gentleman, the wrestler and really incredible athlete, one of the world's most incredible athletes. He when he lost, he said after his loss, you have to be. Some people in boxing, sometimes you take that first loss and you get crushed because you believe you're indestructible. And when you become destructible, then all of a sudden you can't come back from it. Dan Gable took that loss, and he said in the next year, he learned more than what he had learned in the 12 years previous to it, because it drove him. And that's what we're looking for. And I'm not saying drive to win, drive you to be better. And if that's like, hey, I'm 1 year into this, and that guy beat me, I don't think he should have, because I beat him before, and I know in my head, I know I do stuff better. Then figure it out. Right? Mm-hmm. That's the goal. And from the first year guy to the 30-year guy are doing the same thing. Yeah. And going back to, and I'm gonna throw this one at Tristan, and that's and what Sean just said, that is what the instructor is looking for. He's not looking for you to win. He's happy when you do. That's not what he's looking for.
Yeah. Well, and I've felt too, for years it would be, you find a deficiency, and I love Sean's terminology there. You find something that's wrong and it pisses you off. You're like, I shouldn't have this. This sucks. Yep. But you learn to turn that around and turn it into a joy. Like it's something to purge. Now you have an agenda. Like, here's how I'm going to get you. Then you form your plan. Here's how I'm going to get rid of this. Here's how I'm going to deal with that. And that's exactly what Bruce Lee did with this book, of wanting to purge the deficiencies that he had inherited from an art that he felt was limited. And I like he put in there that really all he was trying to do was rediscover what his art had forgotten and had left behind.
Right.
And at least he had an art with a living lineage. In the SCA, we're recreating. I don't say recreating an art, because we're really doing stick combat, not sword combat. But we are starting this. The SCA has started from scratch to reconstruct.
It's a new sport.
It's a new sport.
Very new. Yeah, 50 years is very new.
Yeah, it is. But the principles that it's built on are universal. They go back. Yes. You can take those fundamental principles from other arts, and I think that's what Bruce Lee did here. And I wanted to mention this too, because if you think this book is not a comprehensive compendium of all of his notes, there were far too many to make one volume. There is a man named John Little, and he compiled into a series of books a lot of other notes and whatnot that Bruce Lee had. And one of them, and I thought this was in this book when I reviewed it, but it's been so long since I dug deep into these things. But in one of the books, and I wish I could remember the title of it, he actually collected Bruce Lee's notes about boxing and fencing and savate, and he had all of his notes about breaking down of, here's what I really liked about what I can steal from this art, and here's what I don't care for. You could almost go through and hear what he was thinking about. All right, how do I sort through what I'm going to gather and keep versus what I'm going to leave? And so if you're into this book, if you really get into the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, definitely look into some of the John Little volumes that have Bruce Lee's other notes in it. One of which is, and I think this was my favorite of all of them, was The Art of Expressing the Human Body, which was Bruce Lee's notes on his diet and his exercise regimen. All the different things that he would do for conditioning, training. I mean, he was obsessive about it. There's always more to expand on into his notes. And I wanted to mention that before we get through this episode. But yeah, to get back to the absorbing and dealing with those deficiencies, and I'd go back to, when we started this whole SCA Coaches Corner, was kind of on when Sean and I and Brannos all taught at the Known World Rattan Symposium. And he talked about the process of learning and the process of identifying these deficiencies and treating it not like an emotional barrage of, oh my God, I suck, I'm awful, I can't believe that I failed so miserably, and leave that mentality behind and turn it into almost a cold mechanical process of, okay, what are the problems I have to fix? List them out and work on them. You work them, and then
one at a time.
Yeah, it's just you set them up and knock them down.
Yep.
It's a far easier on your psyche method mindset than beating yourself up for your failures. And at least that's what I found.
Yeah, it's that thing from How to Train Your Dragon. It's like, you just gestured at all of me, right? It's like, what's wrong with my fight? Well, in the beginning stages of your fighting, the answer is yes. Like everything, right? But let's identify what those things are, and and pick one thing and get better at that one thing. And the other things you have are still deficiencies, but we'll get to those when they become the problem instead of a problem. And being able to isolate those and yeah, it's like eating an elephant, right? I mean, just chipping away, one little thing here and there. And it does. It takes a great deal of patience, for sure. Because everybody, people want to just get in armor and they just want to be good right now. And when you're, I think what you end up with is you're trying to fix everything all at once, and that just doesn't work.
Yep.
Brannos, you muted again.
Man, I will never win. So the good part, if people have a chance, if you have ESPN Plus, they do a documentary or a series, or I think it was a couple of things on Be Like Water, and that was from Bruce Lee's notes as well. And they put a whole series of great long kind of documentary about Bruce Lee, and I think it was his daughter who did it, and a few other people, and super good. Another series to watch. Again, more of a show, than his life. But IP Man, who was kind of fundamental, right? Get that series. I mean, and there's lots of them. So, and some of them are subtitled, but well worth watching. But there was a comment, and Sunwolf made it, and she mentioned that she believes heavyweight, that heavy fighting did help her in real life. And I would agree 100%. I mean, I think this goes down to, when somebody's trying to hit you, or somebody's trying to grab you, you don't get so excited that you make bad decisions. I think first thing is you get probably a chance to see what somebody does before they do it. You can read people better, because that's what we have to do when we're fighting, right? We know better if somebody's trying to grab you from a range. We know how to control range better than many other people, right? We know how to fake, go one way, go the other, right? There's another layer. We know how to fake a jab. We know how to fake, we know how to manipulate people in a dangerous situation. And Sean, you brought it right up. And I talk about this all the time. And I can see people look at me like, no, it's not normal. And that is, sometimes you have to walk into a punch, right? To make it better, right? You got to walk into that blow so that it's no good. Not many people, most people, that common thing is get away.
Yeah, the fight or flight instinct. The flight instinct is so predominant in who we are as animals.
Yeah. And we're in that space where we learn it's like we're never going to leave our eyes off that person until we absolutely know we're safe, right? Mm-hmm. That's not the case with everybody.
No. Yeah, the one thing too, and this is, I guess, the mindset thing, where SCA heavy fighting does help is there's a certain desensitization when it comes to being struck. And yes, we have armor, but I'm sure every one of us has been butt wrapped and hit where we don't have armor, and it hurts, and you get used to that. But the big one really is when you feel that stress. And I think all of us have felt that stress and tension when we're faced with an opponent. Yes, we're armored, but we don't want to get hit. There is that stress and tension. In real life scenarios, that stress and tension is often a tool that's used by a predator or an attacker. They'll get close to you. They'll put a hand on you. It's the hand itself is maybe not harming you, but you know something's wrong. You know there's a very high level of stress. And to be able to act and not freeze is something that we do tend to learn in our sport. And in a lot of martial sports will do that same thing. I know even just last night I was working with my students of getting choked. Somebody puts both their hands around your throat and squeezes your windpipe. They squeeze your neck. Not only did I show them the techniques and methods that you use there, I had the attacker really try to choke them, because it's like this, you need to be desensitized. Firstly, you realize no one's going to choke you out with their bare hands in a few seconds. In fact, it's really hard to do it. But you get used to, okay, I'm grabbed by the throat. Your mind no longer freaks out when somebody puts their hands on you because you've had it happen. You go through it. And this is, I think, goes to Sean's. You just do the work, which is you get used to having a stick swung at your head over and over and over and over again from every angle as fast as somebody can do it. And you just get used to, what do I need to do to respond? And you train in your responses. You do it under stress. And, I think that what Bruce Lee talked about in the book is like when it's down to self-defense, one thing that's a little different from sport in that sense is he said, you do not waste any time. I mean, you hit like lightning as quick as you can. And that's why that straight lead was so important. Like he wanted his fingers 10 inches from the opponent's eyes and just bam, right into the eyeballs right away. No messing around, no playing, no feinting, no manipulating, no mind game, no pressure back and forth. It's just boom, it's over. It should be over in a blink of an eye. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on on that part.
So here's another real quick quote. And I know we're running towards the end of this, but I love some of the quotes that came out of this book. But I have to laugh at a couple of things real quick here. And one of it is my friends to a break from Pennsic to go to Lollapalooza. They said Pennsic Melee's made the mosh pit feel tame. I love we take that mess. That was good. Anyways, the fighter is always single-minded with the objective in view to fight. This is not to win, but to fight. They're not thinking about what's for dinner. It's to fight, right? Looking neither backwards or nor sideways. You must get rid of obstructions to his forward momentum. Forward momentum means working through that fight, emotionally, physically, or intellectually, right? All of those things are things we deal with while we're doing it. And, emotionally, you have to be very careful with that. And some of that, when they talk emotionally, it's talking about taking emotion out. And Tristan actually just said that, or Tristan or Sean, it was like, sometimes you get to that place where, and I've been just getting this conversation, is like, they feel like they're winning more, but emotionally it's not affecting them. It's like, why am I not happy about winning? Sean, how often are you happy about winning? Right?
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of times recently, we had a practice Two Sticks Finn from down there in Estiora.
Yeah.
And I'd fought him last summer out here for spring training, and I was fighting with the Sword and Buckler, and then I fought him again, just a couple of months ago, and he, like, as I recalled, it felt like I got hit more this time than I did last time. But when we got done, Sven had said, "You're doing a lot better with that than you were last year." And it's kind of counterintuitive. But I think it happened when I was in Hawaii too. It's similar sort of thing where it's like, "Oh, you're doing a lot better with that." And I was like, "Oh, I just felt like you just hit me a lot more." Right. And the thing we need to understand about that is, well, that's what progress looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can legitimately be better with a particular tool or skill set and feel like you're losing more fights and like quite possibly be losing more fights.
Yeah.
Right. Because part of that is when you start, and this is something we find at the especially the lower levels of fighters, when you are the unbelted fighter at the practice with all the dukes, and you don't feel like you're getting any better because your victory percentages don't change at all, right? What you don't understand is as you get better, we are increasing the skill necessary to maintain a certain win-loss percentage. We are putting out more effort in order to maintain, again, that those victory percentages. And you don't see your progress because you don't have the one tangible thing that we have to judge that by, and that's body count, right? So sometimes that's what progress looks like. You can legitimately be doing better in your execution and be losing more fights doing it. It just happened to me.
Yeah.
So doesn't matter how good you are. It just happened to me. Right.
And this goes back to one of our very first ones, and that is to know oneself is to study oneself in action with another person, right? And that's what we're talking about. And so we're really kind of hitting the end of the shows, folks. And there's so much more in this book. Again, I think we're hopefully what we're talking about here is that mental place of constantly moving forward, right? And that all of these skills are things that we're trying to get better at. I find myself in beautiful places of flow and stuff, but it's really, for me, fighting is, and I talk to Rongvalder about this all the time, it's like the place where we can go meditate and find that space of like just clarity, right? Just one thing. And it is a beautiful space. Is it exciting? No. Is it enjoyable? Absolutely. Right.
Yes.
Exactly. And it's not Rongvalder beats me in that space. I beat him in that space. It's still enjoyable.
Yeah. It's not necessarily, fun, right?
No.
It's not the carrying on with hilarity kind of fun that some people like to think it is, but it is enjoyable.
Yeah, it's just so clear. So, that's where we're focusing to. And that's why these, we look at these little old masters and people that practice for so long, and they get into those places and they react faster than some of their fastest students because they know what that student's doing before that student sometimes even knows themselves. Yeah. But they can read a body better as well. They can read intent better. They can do all of those things better. So it's like, why is that little old man throwing that person across the field? Well, that's what it is. I mean, it's no different in the SCA. We still have, Rongvalder still one of the top fighters in the country, if not, in the world in what we do. And he's turning 60. Or may have turned 60. He's going to have to tell me. But, why is he the top? Why is that? Right? Well, because he knows he's working through those spaces. And it doesn't mean he's going to be that way all the time. But, and if you ask him, he'll absolutely say that his skills are far below what they used to be. And sometimes it's hard to see, right, what other skills you develop. Your physical skills might have went away. But your mental skills.
I keep feeling like I'm getting better.
Yep.
I certainly feel like I can get better.
I think that can also be referred to as your fight IQ is going up.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Your physical skills may not be where they were, but your intelligence and your ability to fight smart gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last one, and then we'll talk about what's next week. And just the last one to leave you with it, just because we talk about this all the time. And I know John talked about this, and this is really the fundamental of Jeet Kune Do. And then that is, set patterns, incapable of adaptation or adaptability, of pliability, only offers a better cage, right? And what they mean by that is you are trapped. There is no growth. The truth is outside all those patterns. So think about that. And I think that's really what, Bruce Lee wanted everybody. So I think this is the reason why he didn't write this book, because to write the book is essentially to create that cage.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll say just to summarize just a little bit, one of my big takeaways from this has always been, there's a lot of stuff in here that is physical skills that are applicable to Jeet Kune Do as an art. But I think where this applies to what we do in martial arts as general is one of the big takeaways from this is read this book and listen to not so much the how of how these things happen. Listen to the why, because this whole book is just littered with why we do things, and again, when you make better decisions about what you're doing, our sport just gets easier. So look more for the why and less of the how.
Tristan, what do you got?
Well, next week we're going to be covering terminology. We're going to go over basically some of the terms that we use not only on the show but in SCA fighting in general. So I wanted to mention that. Should be kind of interesting. And what I would like to do is actually invite people to post up terms that they have either run across, they don't get, or ones that you have run into, what it means, but it's hilarious because a lot of these terms got some really good, funny backstories to them. So we want to cover a lot of that in next week's episode.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do is we'll post something up and say, hey, if you can't make the episode, then leave us those terms and we'll go through it so you can watch it later. If you can make the episode, throw it out there. Hold those terms, throw them out there for us, and we'll try to get through them. And I think it could be a little bit of fun. Kind of looking forward to that as well. I think a lot of people are at Golf Wars, folks. So I know, I'm not quite sure who's there. I know that one of our coaches, Louis, Sir Louis, is there, or His Highness. He mentioned that if he finds a few people, and he might give us like 15, 20 minutes of a quick Golf Wars. Hey, we're here. We're having fun. Wish you were here type of look. And so if that happens, we'll just break in with a special bulletin and we'll go from there. It's the idea of the show. It's we're here to enjoy times together. That's what the SCA helps us do, is enjoy those times together. And we just got to lean into it. And that's what's made 30 some plus years, and even more for Sean, and Tristan has a lot under his belt too. But I mean, we're here because we really enjoy being around our friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
So, but meanwhile, everybody have a safe and wonderful weekend. I hope we see you next week. I hope we see you on Coach's Corner. We'd love to some great stuff to talk about out there this week. A couple good posts. Tristan, you posted a cool meme up there.
Classic from Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's classic.
I loved it. Right.
I was just thinking about that one earlier while we were talking.
And for those who haven't read it, he said Wyatt Earp said, "Fast is fine, but accuracy is final. You must learn you must learn to move slow in a hurry."
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. Those kinds of things are fun. So, look at, find the positivity, because that positivity helps you become a much better fighter. So stay with us. Let's keep spouting the positivity. Let's give it to everybody, and we'll just become a better community.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
Night, guys.